Today we're going to lay out our pattern on our piece of fabric for our pajama pants. And the tools that you're going to need today are, you will need your measuring tape, you'll need your pin cushion supplied with plenty of pins, and your scissors once you're ready to cut and you have the okay from me. In addition to that, you're going to need the piece of fabric that you've selected for your pants and your pattern. Alright, the first thing you're going to do is figure out if your fabric has an obvious vertical design. If it does, an example of that would be like this. Stripes, most times you would want the stripes to go up and down on your leg, not horizontally, because that makes you look bigger and fatter. This is just an example of that. So if I were to use this piece of fabric, I would fold it like that, but it's not big enough, so I can't make it with that. So luckily I have another piece of fabric that has no vertical design. It's just simply polka dots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the fabric with the selvages together, and that means the selvages are these bound edges of the fabric where they've stopped the weave at the factory and they've bound it off. Raw edges look like this. It's where they cut the edges at the fabric store, and there's no binding on them. They will fray, and they should have some fray to them after you've washed them in the wash machine and dried them to pre-shrink your fabric. So let me fold the selvages together. Oh wait, I'm going to fold it in half because the piece of fabric, or because the pattern is so wide, that's the way we've got to do it. So I guess you would call it hamburger style as opposed to hot dog style, if you're familiar with those terms. Alright, so I'm going to lay it out. And the straight of the grain goes right along with the selvages. So the straight of the grain is this way. Cross grain is perpendicular to the selvages. And you want to make sure it all smooths out very nicely. And you may have to crawl around because you'll be doing this on the floor out in the hall on the carpeting, thank goodness. But I am in here at a table, which is ideal. So I'm going to walk around to the other side and finish smoothing out the wrinkles, the lay of the pattern, and the hang of the pants. So I'm going to, now I've got all the wrinkles out, I'm going to put the pattern on here and just place it. And this particular, these pajama pants, it's a great beginning sewing project because there's only one pattern piece. So how much easier can it get than that? And it's large, so that's why we do it in this particular class. Now you can see right here there's this line on the pattern, and that is that arrow establishes what would be straight of the grain. Well, we're doing it cross grain, so we're not going to do that, but we still want it to hang right. So we're going to use this fold. I've got my selvages all evened out, all the wrinkles are smoothed out, and I want my pants to hang neatly. So I'm going to measure from this arrow to my fold, and I'm going to pin it in a couple of places, and I'm going to be seeing if the fold and this line run parallel, and that's what I'm going to work on now. Alright, I have repositioned the fabric to make it easier for me to reach. I've got that fold that's the crosswise fold facing me, and I've scooched it over. The reason I've left so much space between here and here is so that when I finish the pants, I'll still have this big piece of fabric that I could use for something else, if there's enough of it. Maybe just some craft I'm going to do or something. But I'd rather do that than have two smaller pieces that are good for probably nothing. So I'm going to, first off, I'm going to put a pin in the middle of this arrow, and I'm going to measure with my measuring tape from the center all the way to this crosswise fold, and it's it's 24 and almost 5/8. So what I want to do to ensure that the line runs parallel to the crosswise fold is take it over here, and it's actually right almost on the mark perfectly. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Alright, so I'm going to put a pin here to hold it in place. Ouch. Never fails that you prick yourself. And then I'm going to measure over here. I've already forgotten what it was. It was 24 and almost 5/8. And this one is a little too far away, so I need to move it a little bit closer to the fold. And now I've got it just right. Alright. Unless anything moved, this line is parallel to this fold line over here. So what I like to do is I like to double check that when I was pinning nothing moved, because things have a way of moving and you don't realize it. Alright, everything's good. So this line, the straight of the grain line, is parallel to the crosswise grain, the fold that I've created. And the next step is simply to pin around all the edges, the periphery of the pants pattern. And you want to be especially careful to stabilize the corners and pin there, because when you're cutting, your scissors tend to slip, and if your scissors slip as you're cutting, then you're going to have pants that don't fit quite right, and they may be too small in one place or too big, and you don't want that. Now, if you can see on the pattern, there are these notches that are cut out, and they're all around. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 of them, and those notches are important for when you're assembling your garment, and you want to line up the notches. So do not cut the notches off, and you want to pin right beside them so that you can get around that notch, so that it'll be right where it needs to be, so that it can match up with the other notch that's just like it, so that you can have the pants hang evenly as well. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to finish pinning around the garment, and I'll meet you back in a minute when I'm ready to cut. Okay, thanks for coming back. I have now successfully pinned the pattern to the piece of fabric that is doubled, because I have 2 legs and they each need to be covered. And I have made sure to pin by the corners and pin by the notches, and I'm ready to cut. And I made sure my scissors were sharpened, and so I'm going to cut slowly around the pattern. I'm not cutting the pattern, I'm cutting right along the edge of the pattern. I don't want to cut into the pattern, I want to just cut the fabric right along the edge. If you accidentally nick it, it's not the end of the world, but we do use these over and over again until they fall apart. Okay, did you see how I cut around those 2 notches? I'm leaving them on, and we've made them huge so that you can't miss them when you're ready to sew. I'm just going to continue cutting along the edge. Alright, I finished cutting it out. This is what it looks like now, and I need to look closely up at the top, because one of these J's is for the back crotch seam and the other is for the front. And so you need to mark them as different, because they do look pretty similar, and if you're a beginning sewer, it's going to be hard for you to tell which is which. This is the front seam right here. It has the smaller J as opposed to this back center crotch seam with the deeper J that allows room for your bottom. So I need to mark them differently, so I'll know them quickly at a glance which is which. So I like to this is the only marking that you do on this pattern, which is another reason I love this project for beginning sewers. And what I'm going to do right here is I'm just going to put an X or a little asterisk star inside the seam line, because it is pencil, it'll come off, but you know, why tempt fate? So I'm doing that on the wrong side of the fabric, and I cut this out with the right sides, with the wrong sides together, right sides out, So that's important to know too. Anyway, mark the front so that you can tell it from the back quickly at a glance. And now we're ready to unpin the pattern and get to sewing.